Role-playing games. In general, I mean, there's not a lot people that actually know role-playing games really well. What do role-playing games mean in the modern society? What do they stand for?
Role-playing games, I think, to the kids and a lot of people now with their own kids who kind of grow up with them, it's a kind of game where you get to play out a story with a group of other people, and you get to make the story whatever you want. So it's kind of like a game form, or even an art form, where you get to take a narrative and take an idea and run with it with a group of other people.
But isn't that what makes games like World of Warcraft and whatever so immensely popular? The fact that you can play with others and create your own adventures in a way. How come paper role-playing games are still, even exist? How does that happen with the amazing shit that people can do on, computers and consoles?
Paper role-playing games are hot. I mean, this is the thing, you can make, it does not take very much energy at all if you compare it to a huge production like World of Warcraft online, with all the coding, all the graphics, all that kind of shit, all the servers. Here you've just got a piece of paper and a group of friends and a bunch of beers and a whole pile of candy and an evening. And you're going to be playing that you're in like some kind of post-apocalyptic dream world. You don't know what's going to happen to your character, you don't know what's going to happen to anybody else, and you're just going to play it out for the hell of it, for fun. It's so simple and it's so easy to get started. And there are so many games started out with, like, not to belittle the orcs and the elves, right? But so many games started out in this fantasy kind of world. And now it's so common to have games that are set anywhere. You can play anything. I've seen like paper tabletop role-playing games where you're just playing that you're trying to go on a date with somebody. Or that, like, I've seen, like, there's a LARP where you're supposed to play it on a balcony and there's two of you, and this is the morning that you're breaking up.
Holy shit, that's amazing.
I know.
That is. So, yeah, so really a lot of the magic in role-playing games is in the social activity of creating and playing with your friends, with other people, and kind of sharing in the same world that you're actually creating in your own minds. So is that something that's really exclusive to role-playing games in the tabletop level? Do you get the same kicks from World of Warcraft?
It's hard for me to say. I really play a lot of World of Warcraft. I mean, there it's like it's really set that you can play out, and also because it's like massively multiplayer and online, you're going to meet a lot of people who aren't really the people you want to play with anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that one of the things about having role-playing games, both of the paper variety and of the live-action, like LARP variety, is that you often get to play out a story that that you didn't expect was going to happen, right? So you may have some ideas of where your character is supposed to go, and it's not about necessarily leveling up or anything like that. It's just about you have an idea of what a good story would be for your character, but then the people who are with you have a completely different idea. They're going to throw something at you. It's not going to work. So you have to learn to adapt. It's really kind of sophisticated and human. You can have some really nuanced.
It's like a team building exercise. That's kind of cool.
Well, yeah, there is that. Except, I've seen people like, I played one game called Don't Rest Your Head, and it's this kind of like horror dream narrative, and I was like, I couldn't sleep. Our GM was just just calmly describing what's happening.
What's a GM?
Game master.
Game master.
Yeah, our game master. So it's great because so the rest of us have characters, and she's the one who, when we say, this is a very simple role-playing game. So we would say, like, okay, I'm gonna go into the hospital and I'm gonna open the door on my left, and then she says, okay, you go in, this is what you see, this is what happens, this is what's going on. And she was just so good at making up stuff on the fly. Like, she has a basic plan, and then when anybody gives her a trigger, she just makes it up and puts this here and reorganizes this and that. And she scared the living daylights out of all of us with this story. We're like, we still haven't finished it, and I think it's because we're all too afraid.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I mean, we're 35 years old. All of us are like, we're
that's
like,
great. That's great. So let's get the basics straight, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have no idea what a tabletop role-playing game is, or what a dungeon master is, or what a LARP is. So what basic explanation? What's a tabletop role-playing game?
Okay, a tabletop role-playing game is a game usually comes with some paper and a set of rules, and often it has dice or some other kind of system for decision making, but not always. And basically what it is you're gonna use these tools to tell a collective story. And it can last a couple hours, it can last, I've seen games that have lasted 10 years. So, they just play them every once in a while, it continues. A live action role play gets rid of all the tools, in a way. So, or a lot of the tools, like you just have your character, you dress up as your character, you speak as your character, and you're living with other characters for the duration of the LARP, and you play however you do. Sometimes there are mechanics to make decisions, again. Sometimes there's a game master who interferes, and sometimes not. It sort of depends on the style. There's I hesitate to put it kind of more simply than that, just because there's so many different styles going on right now. There are people who play games that you're supposed to kind of win. You're supposed to get the goal and then or solve the puzzle, and then you've done well for your character. And there are lots of people who intentionally play to lose. As a huge group, it's like, we're all cancer survivors, and we're gonna get together for a reunion. And at the end of the LARP, one of us is gonna die.
Oh God, Jesus, that's. What?
We don't have enough. We don't have enough bad things happening in our life. We have to make it up in a LARP. I played LARPs in a prison camp. I played LARPs relating to HIV and AIDS in the 80s. I've also played one in a Harry Potter universe.
Yeah, that's bad, man. That's bad. That's some serious catharsis right there, man. I understand cancer, but
I cried.
Yeah, really?
Listen, well, I was a professor. One of my students did something stupid, got himself killed. I cried.
That is so bad.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, okay, role-playing games and pen and paper role-playing games and LARPing and stuff like that, it's not viewed as nerdy as it used to be viewed as. But I mean, LARPing and like you writing your own tabletop RPG adventures, that's pretty damn nerdy still, and it's viewed as such. But I mean, why? Because to me it seems that that's like an amazing social building exercise. It's like it's such an opportunity to really educate yourself on creativity, on whatever problem solving. So why do you think that it still has that slight stigma?
I think it's because there are probably quite a lot of people who are into role-playing games who got into it. I think a lot of them had some kind of social awkwardness and difficulty, and they kind of used these games as a way to work that out, to kind of try something out, to be somebody else for a while, be somebody cool for a bit, and kind of relax that feeling. But at the same time, why not be nerdy? What's wrong with being a bit niche? What's wrong with being a little bit awkward? I think it's there are some things in life where it's all right to be a bit of a nerd.
Well, so Jamie, you had a project that you wanted to talk about.
Sure. I have a LARP that, God willing, in a fast infield will end up being out around next year, near the time of this big conference. And what I've done with my friend Petri Leinonen, we had this idea about a post-identity society. So what that means is, you've got because everything now is about your data, your Facebook profile, your updates, who's making money off of this, blah blah blah. And so we invented a society where all of that system has completely broken down, and now what you have is a post-identity society where nobody has a name, nobody has a passport, nobody has these kinds of family ties and stuff like that. And we just wanted to see how will it be to live as humans in that kind of environment? And that's kind of like what you do when you're making a LARP, is you kind of often you have an idea about a basic story or a world that you would like to try living in.
Yeah.
And then you make 60 people live in it for 3 days.
That's amazing.
So it's kind of like some of these things have massive production budgets. Because you're renting out like either a castle or an old destroyer or something, and sometimes you're just going off into the woods and pretending that where you are happens to be an military base camp from 50 years ago. You make believe based on what your budget is.
That is so cool.
And it's fun for somebody like me who is starting out as like a writer or in theater, where the story is really, the story is put on paper and it's fixed. And here, like, not only is the story improvised, but you really have very little control once it starts. You write all the characters, you try to give them enough information so that, like, all the players know this is who I have relationships with, and this is the sort of thing I think I want during the course of this game. And then you just tell them to go. And if you've designed all the elements with enough structure and enough freedom, they go, and they break down and cry halfway through the third act, and you're happy.
That's amazing.
The goal is basically to make a lot of people cry.
But there's many certain different types of LARPs. There's like you got your old-fashioned high fantasy with the elves and thunderbolts and shit like that. You got, like, I don't know, cyberpunk. It's really like rising its head at the moment. I mean, you love sci-fi, obviously. But how usual is it for somebody that's writing LARPs to actually take real problems and real things from our society and putting them into the LARP?
Quite often. It really depends. It also happens that if you write 40 or 50 characters, you end up writing about a lot of people. And you don't write maybe more than a couple pages about them. But you have to give them a basic background. And when you have to write that many people into a story, you end up with a lot of diversity. You end up with a lot of problems. And that part gets really interesting.
The future of pen and paper role-playing games and LARPs, because it's something that's really taking shape. It's something that, holy shit, that's beautiful.
I know.
It's really getting up, and more people are getting excited about that, and that fact is getting crowdfunded a lot. So how do you see the future of role-playing games? What's it gonna be?
Well, that's an interesting question. One thing that's really cool about role-playing games is that they're not very easily... Okay, their distribution is a really interesting topic, because on one hand, with the crowdfunding and all that kind of stuff, and crowd publishing, it's easier than ever to write your game, have it made up to look really nice, test it with a few people, then get it out there and publish it, and you can sell it as well. So in a way, you can distribute the actual tools, the game itself. But playing it is never going to be in the same way that a film is right now, a mass product, where everybody's supposed to have seen the same one. Even if everybody's played your game, they played a different story every single time. So, imagine if somebody just said, that there's just one Dungeons and Dragons story. That's absurd. There are hundreds of thousands, if not even millions, of stories and iterations of that going on. So, I always see, no matter what the future of role-playing games is, I do see it as being something that is quite local, or at least it involves a fairly small, intimate group of people who are all sharing the same experience. But I also see that as a really good kind of advantage, because if you get a particular experience that only you and 12 of your friends have had, it does draw you together in a particular way.
Do you think that Wizards of the Coast and whatever those guys that are kind of in charge, are they trying to make pen and paper role-playing games something that could be more of it's a single thing that you sell. It's something that it's something that you experience with other people. It's the exact same thing, or is that something that's never gonna happen, or something that we don't want to happen?
I think that some people will, for business purposes.
Yeah.
Somebody will always be trying to find out, how can I standardize something? How can I make it more modular? How can I make it so that I can package it for a mass audience?
Yeah,
because that's where the money is.
Sure.
But then you're going to get a mass-produced game, and that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the real spirit of innovation and the way that people play, like even if you have these like very standardized and commercialized games, people are just going to hack them.
Yeah.
And then they're going to post their hacks on the internet, and then other people are going to play their hacks, and then there's going to be a big fight about who owns that hack material and whether they should get paid for it and copyright, etc. I think the games is not something you can really always just put together in a saleable package, because it kind of built into the idea of playing a game is playing with the game.
Yeah, sure. That's but in a way also the pen and paper role-playing industry in special is like, it's really immune to like all this dickishness of corporate world and corporate like
No, it's not.
just, well, in a way, because I mean if somebody solds out, right,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna be there. There's a huge group of people who've invested an enormous amount of time into getting into this world, and now somebody's pissing on it, so they're gonna take a stand.
Yeah.
Because it's still, I mean, it's easier now to get into pen and paper role-playing than it probably ever has been. But it's still something that it still needs a commitment. If you want to really learn how to play 5 different like archetypes of D20 system games, you need a time investment. So if somebody fucks with that, you're gonna take serious offense.
Yeah.
But if somebody makes a crap movie, you're like, well, it's a crap movie.
Yeah.
So that's something that's like inherent in the system in a way. But what about like digitalization and like internet, stuff like that? I mean, there's been like pen and paper role-playing game on the internet for a long time. But do you see that as something that will be more standardized and something that more people will do in the future?
I don't know about doing pen and paper over the internet. I mean, that I've seen also like forum games, text message games, correspondence games where people role play just through text. What I think we will find more of is I'm really excited to see augmented reality.
Sure.
Because, for instance, like I can, it's already to the point where like I can, for instance, take this word here, this breakfast, this particular pattern of it. I can take a photograph of it and I can run it through a program so that if you take a picture of that with your phone, it will launch a video or just of that or of any corporate logo or of any particular exact trigger that you photograph it and it launches this whole story. So I can also see digital technology and the internet kind of using to augment role-playing games, but will they be pen and paper?
Well, yeah, but that's like, what do you even call that? Like, if you had like an augmented reality live role-playing game, for example.
Well, it could be like an alternative reality game, of which there are many. Pervasive gaming, meaning that the game world is everywhere, and it exists sort of as a layer on top of the real world. Those are a little bit ethically difficult.
It's a gray area.
Yeah.
It's a gray area.
The only reason why it's kind of ethically difficult is because then in a lot of alternate reality games or pervasive games, you end up playing with the public. Like they will give you an instruction to like, go bum €2 off of a stranger. And that's a really interesting thing to do as a character.
Yeah.
But now you've involved another person who has no idea that you're playing a game.
Exactly.
And these kinds of things happen quite.
Yeah, this person has not made a conscious choice.
Exactly. And so there's usually it's really fun, and then at some point it slides into gray area.
Sure, but I mean that's, I think, a part of the magic too, because if an RG, alternative reality game, is made really well, For example, online, you get guys actually digging clues that some dude left in some fucking corporate mainframe somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is like illegal as shit.
What was the one called? Like the Beast or something like that? The one that they made for the artificial intelligence movie.
Yes.
I read a lot about this afterwards.
And it was huge. It was pretty big.
I mean, that's also an interesting new form of gaming, because there's this idea of like the hive mind.
Yeah.
And when the designers of that game, of the Beast, they ran into this huge problem, because for any single individual, that puzzle would have been absolutely impossible to solve.
Yeah.
No way. But once they had a critical mass of people, anything took a couple hours. That was it. And they're like, we're working so hard to make these puzzles.
Yeah.
You guys have crushed them because there's so many of you.
So you need like a community of people to build.
Well, in a sense, like the way that a computer calculator changed the way that you can crunch numbers. Like, it becomes like the internet. The hive mind becomes like a human computer for playing games and puzzles.
It's like a really great outside the box thinking supercomputer.